session to finish up today. I'm going to talk to you about some key jobs to emerge from the pandemic. There have been winners and losers in this pandemic. As we've already talked and mentioned quite a few times, the sectoral impact is really quite diverse from the pandemic and the associated downturn. So some jobs are kind of pushing forward and gaining, and others are the losers, as it were. So I'm going to talk to you about pay for some key growth areas in 2020 and the ones that we also expect to continue into 2021. So the three key areas I'm going to focus are data analytics, road haulage and retail. So starting with data analytics, there's a growing need for meaningful data and analysis. So we've seen a rise in demand for an emergence of new roles for data scientists, data engineers, and business intelligence roles. This has been building over a few years, but it seems to have gained momentum more recently when everything seems to be going online, cloud-based, etc. It's really driven an expansion of these kind of newer roles. So we decided to undertake our first study looking at paying conditions for data analytics in the summer. Probably couldn't be worse timing. In the summer, it's not great to get hold of people, and also we're in the throes of a lockdown pandemic. But we did manage to get together a good sample of 20 mainly large private sector firms who employ 325 staff in total. And our plan will be to continue expanding this survey as we learn more about which roles are developing and expanding. So we're still in the process of trying to find out which firms have these roles and the job titles that they use, because there is quite a lot of variation. It's a little bit of an unknown area. But we're pleased to get some data on this, and we found that the niche roles are often single posts, or they only have a very small number of staff in them. So, for example, a key job of data scientist, from our sample, it ranged from employers employing just one data scientist to a team of 16. But the average was 4.8 post holders, and the median was 2.5. We go to the slightly more senior position of a lead scientist. Here we found employers employed between 1 and 6 in their teams, and the median is 2, average at 2.2 post holders. So we're looking at quite unique, niche, sometimes individual jobs, which we need to try and identify and collect data from. One of the key things we wanted to find out from employers was about how their staff numbers have changed in the area of data analytics. And 13 of the 20, which represents 65%, said that their staff numbers grew in 2020, and the same amount expect data analytic roles to continue to grow in 2021. So that pool of these specialist people with these skills, there's going to continue to be pressures there as organisations seek to expand their data analytics functions. So the reasons for growth obviously is more expected demand, but also one company interestingly said that their data analytics roles are going to form part of their plans to help restructure the organisation to tackle and deal with and compensate for financial hits that have been caused by the coronavirus pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see if others do something similar. So data analytic roles face both recruitment and retention pressures. And the chart we've got here, we've got in the purple shows how many said to us their recruitment or retention situation is currently fairly difficult. The green is those who cited it as being very difficult, and blue are those who say it's not a problem. So as we can see from the chart, 3/4 have told us that they've got recruitment difficulties, and that these are either fairly difficult, as indicated by the purple block, or very difficult, as indicated by the green block, whereas half report that they have issues with retention. So obviously this is set up against the backdrop of the pandemic, which is probably going to be holding down retention problems. But obviously recruitment still is a key area here, and it remains tough because of the skills which are key for these roles. And in some cases, these are scarce skills. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about pay levels, because we're obviously seeing that the recruitment pressures are there, and inevitably that drives up pay, or it's a factor that helps drive up pay. So we're going to have a little look at the pay levels for 3 key jobs: data analysts, data scientists, and data architects. So beginning with analysts, this chart is taken from our online salary benchmarking tool, Pay Benchmarker. I've not filtered the data by subsector or region, so the figures shown here are for the whole economy. However, I have provided a breakdown by broad job level, and this is based on our own job evaluation scheme. But generally, levels 4 and 5 cover kind of vocational supervisory jobs. 7 and 8 are the sort of professional jobs. So a level 6 might be what you would think of as a junior manager. And we've explained that a level 5 in the survey, we explained that level 5 requires detailed experience and possibly some level of vocational qualifications. So that's the kind of entry point for data analysts. Level 6, we're looking at jobs that require a vocational qualification and sufficient relevant experience, enabled to kind of operate fairly independently in a specialist area or activity. And 7, we're looking at roles involved with the provision of professional services, and we're looking for experienced and qualified professionals to provide expert advice and operate independently. So it just gives you a kind of a background. You're looking at these levels thinking, well, this means nothing to me. Hopefully that resonates with you about some sort of levelling system you use in your organisation. And in terms of what is a data analyst, we defined the job as a role that works across the business to gather and understand requirements from stakeholders. They design data models and ETL pipelines to meet business requirements. They build proof of concepts in SQL and create and maintain data models. They deliver data reports and visualization solutions to stakeholders, and they use a variety of different programming things: Power BI, Tableau, QuickView, R, Python. So that's just to give you a bit of an understanding about what we're actually looking at here, because we know job titles vary and we know that job levelling systems vary. So what is this chart actually showing us? So the pale blue line, the first pale blue, turquoise I say, so the second line in each case, is the median salary that we found from our research. So you can see that data analysts typically earn a base salary of about 27,500 when they start out. So that's obviously the most junior level. We talked about having a vocational qualification, sort of supervisory type level when they commence their careers. But we can see that the salaries increased with experience and responsibilities, up to a median of 42,445 as they gain that experience. This is base pay only. The survey shows that data analytics roles typically also receive bonuses. Health benefits are also fairly common, and we're looking at above normal holidays. So the typical was 33 days. So there seems to be a slightly higher holiday allowance for these sorts of specialist technical roles. So moving on to the data scientists now, another key role. These are typically slightly more senior, and we've got the salaries starting here. Typically they enter on a level 6, which is what we talked about before, is that sort of junior level manager. They have a vocational qualification and relevant experience. So here we're looking at the median starting salary is 43,500. And we can see that rises. You get these jobs at level 7, which is a kind of professional manager, middle manager type level, all the way up to a level 8, which is what we would call a senior professional level. And at that level 8, the median is coming out at 65,000. So these sorts of jobs we kind of try to categorize as jobs that have knowledge and experience in quantitative analysis, using those programs we talked about before, Python, R, SQL, or other programming languages. They build algorithms. They use statistical techniques for data manipulation, so extraction, cleansing, modeling, to produce various different solutions to problems. They're able to present their analysis in clear and concise manner to stakeholders. They apply their knowledge to support exploration, enrichment, and creation of new data sets. They use the knowledge of data blending, statistical analysis, machine learning methods to upscale and automate analysis as well. They're responsible for ensuring that the methodologies they use are robust. So we're talking, they can be quite very senior roles when we're up at that level 8 level. And we often see in the job titles, you've got data scientist, senior data scientist, and lead data scientists. So again, people can kind of really forge out a career for themselves in this, take on more responsibility, deeper analysis, and more stakeholder management responsibilities. The final job I'm going to talk to you about in the data analytics, from the data analytics survey, is the data architect. So here we're talking about very senior jobs in the field. Typically they are level 8, they are being a management type position, and the median salary for this role from our survey is coming out at 70,000. And obviously in addition, they'll also qualify for the bonus, the health benefits, and the holidays that I talked about earlier. So that's one area that I just wanted to talk to you about and share some of our findings on. Likely to continue to be a growing area in 2021, and we're going to carry on expanding that survey. Changing tack completely, we're now in retail. So quite a different picture in retail, and also a very different picture within subsections and divisions of retail. So as we all have seen, the diverse trading conditions during the national lockdowns and various tier system restrictions that we've had have put pressure on the retail industry in lots of different ways, which has resulted in quite a varied landscape on the pay picture. So on the one hand, we've got boosted activity in food, retail and fast food areas, but then also significant loss of trade for non-food retailers and pubs and restaurants. Lots of the hospitality businesses and retailers have been classified as non-essential, so like clothing, outfits, so they're much more likely to have frozen basic pay or awarded lower pay rises to employers than the essential retailers. So there's a bit of a divide going on here. So we've seen higher increases in supermarkets, DIY stores, and outlets that sell both home and food products, so Poundland. And we think we're going to continue seeing that same picture in 2021. So a variety of outcomes in retail. Lots of retailers grew their online businesses in 2020 to accommodate more home deliveries and complement in-store sales. And so that's also had an impact on the logistics side of it, which I'm going to talk about next. A couple of factors for the sector, obviously very affected by the national living wage increase. We know that the national living wage this year, next year has a slight reprieve, so it's not going to rise by as much. It's been rising by 4 or 5% each year. We're expecting, or we're going to get a 2% increase to £8.36 on the 1st of April. And we know that retailers continue to face pressures to address pay gaps, particularly those relating to gender pay gaps. But increasingly ethnicity is part of that picture as well. So in retail, they face a big distinction between differences in pay and pressure on the gender picture between their warehouse staff, mostly male, and their retail staff, mostly female. And we know that there are ongoing equal pay claims against the big four currently. So Asda, Morrison's, Sainsbury's and Tesco's are all facing that. So there's kind of upward and downward pressures. We've got the voluntary living wage, which is due to increase to national figure of £9.50. Again, that's slightly more modest rise there, but it is quite a bit above the statutory minimum, and there has been a growing role of the voluntary living wage. So we think there's those pressures on pay rates. So what have we actually seen? So we can see in this chart, we've provided you the level of the national living wage, the voluntary living wage, and the current minimum key team leader rate at some of the big food retailers. So our analysis in the retail sector of pay rates shows that food retail has managed to maintain a lead over the national living wage. However, some employers, I think, have taken the chance to allow differentials to squeeze slightly. So some have maintained their differentials, others have kind of potentially opportunistically used the pandemic to perhaps not award as such a high rise. The living wage, the national living wage has risen by a lower amount, going to rise at a lower amount. The pressures that the retail we talked about, some sectors freezing, etc., has meant some food retailers have paid less than perhaps we've seen in previous years. One example is Aldi. Their key rate is going to just move by 1.6%. So that's just some examples. In terms of the gap between our median retail rate and the national living wage, we've seen that drop back in food retail. So last year they were 79, the median rate was 79 pence above the statutory minimum. That's fallen, that gap has narrowed to just 49 pence above. So the rates remain higher in food retail. They remain higher than other parts of retail as a whole. They have on the whole continued to apply increases, but there's been some narrowing there. Obviously, some of the decisions, like Zoe said earlier, some of the decisions on pay increases have taken place before the pandemic took hold, different backdrop, and some were long-term deals. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. So the table there just sets out what our median rate is in the various subsections of retail. So the all group is level with the national living wage because the sample is slightly skewed by the numbers of retail caterers, and they tend to pay at that national living wage rate or fairly close to it, whereas the food retail rate is quite a bit more at £9.18 an hour. Interestingly, I think in 2021 we'll see quite a few breaking that £10 an hour barrier. That seems to be a little bit of a ceiling for retail pay. Morrison's has said that it intends to increase the minimum to £10 an hour, and we've also heard from the Aldi increase, while it's lower at 1.6, they are going to set a £10 minimum. It'll be £10.57. In London will rise to £11.32, and their national rate will rise from £9.55 to £10.57. So there's a couple of others that may follow suit. The co-op has told us that it pledges to match the living wage, or aims to match the living wage, which is £9.50. So we could see that gap between food and non-food in retail widen this year. So as I said, some retailers have expanded their online businesses. This has obviously put some pressure on the road haulage sector. So this is the last sector I want to talk to you about. And here, the key thing we've seen really is a shortage of qualified drivers. So the pressure to recruit new staff in logistic and road haulage has increased as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and our pay and conditions in road haulage provides detail on that. Businesses, obviously the retail sector, have had the surge in recruitment, lots more temporary and permanent staff in their warehouse and driving roles. But again, a bit of a mixed picture for road transport, because on the other side, the work that they do supporting the hospitality sector has obviously reduced. So we've seen some road hauliers amending their operations and reassigning staff to different contracts and different areas of work where there's demand to plug that gap. Others have had to place their workers on furlough while the downturn plays out. So we've seen higher pay awards for drivers and warehouse workers than compared to the whole economy. A quarter of the pay awards we have monitored covering the haulage sector were worth 4% or more. And you'll see from Zoe's presentation earlier, if you might remember, that it compares with around 1 in 10 across the whole economy. So quite a bit more higher increases coming through. As a result, basic pay is obviously rising, and we've seen that it's risen faster rate for drivers than it has for warehouse staff. since our last report in 2018. We didn't do a report in 19, so it's a slightly longer view there. So we found that overall basic pay levels for driving jobs has grown by an average of 13.4% since 2018, compared with 9.4% for warehouse roles. So that compares, you know, quite favourably if we think the median has been about 2%, and even last year was about 2.5%. So there's definitely a growing area. The chart here comes from data in the road haulage report, and it provides the basic salary figures for the different types of drivers. So we can see that the median salary from our research for van drivers is 20,541, and that we can see that qualified LGV drivers earn between a median salary of 26,341 and 30,518, depending on the license category. Not shown in the chart, but we also had collected information about managerial positions, which showed that transport managers are typically paid 40,328, which represented growth of 7.2% since 2018. So also growth in the managerial roles within road haulage. The warehouse operative salary, the median came out at 20,269, while supervisors in warehouses sit slightly higher at £26,009 a year. The warehouse manager salaries vary significantly depending on the size of operation they're working within, and they vary from around, depending on size, from 54,000 to 84,000 in the largest regional distribution centres. Again, those are the median figures that I'm quoting. So just finally on road transport, I'm going to finish up in a few minutes, just to talk about the recruitment retention picture. So we've found that nearly 2/3, so 64%, are telling us that they are currently experiencing recruitment challenges, but a much smaller proportion, 36%, are facing problems with retention. So this survey was conducted sort of in the early part of the pandemic, so it could well be that recruitment and retention picture's changed, possibly with recruitment worsening. That is me. I'm going to finish up with that. So thank you very much for listening.